let's work through how to shoot these images, and specifically, I'm gonna give you 5 tips when first starting to use off-camera flash. What's up, friends? My name is Pye. Welcome to another MagMod tutorial. You know me, I like to get straight into this. So first, a quick introduction. This is our friend and model, Chrissy. We will link her up so you can give her a follow. And let's just go right into this. You know, one of the first things, when first starting to learn Flash, there's just a lot there to learn. And the very first one is to use manual flash power. I have here a 7200 on my Canon R5. You can use any camera you'd like, any lens combination. For a scene like this, I'd recommend something a little bit longer, and this is why. What I want to do in this scene is kind of use the foreground cactus and background cactus to kind of frame Chrissy right there. So this is roughly what I am going for, and I'm going to set this to 1/4000, f2.8, and ISO 100. So you'll see from that image that it's a bit dark, right? This is a great time to use off-camera flash, and what I've done is I've placed Chrissy's back to the sun, but just in the shadow side where the face is, it's a bit dark. So what we're gonna do is this. I have a Profoto A1. Again, use any flash you'd like. I'm gonna go ahead and add the sphere onto the top of it, and I'm gonna place this right about here. So Chrissy's gonna keep looking to where the camera was, and I'm gonna get a little angle right here so we have a nice kind of directional Rembrandt light right there. This sphere is just gonna diffuse the light a bit. So powering this on, I'm gonna leave it right there. And right now, I'm setting it to full power. So there's a tendency when learning off-camera flash to want to use TTL modes, right? And what that basically does is the flash is going to kind of take a test shot and give you a sample power setting. And this can work. The only problem with it is that you tend to get inconsistent exposures in flash. And if you're shooting a bunch of images, those small inconsistencies, they take a lot of time to fix. So instead of worrying about that, I'm gonna give you a few basic rules. First, in general, shoot manual flash power, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and set this to manual mode. And because we are running a high shutter speed, we're gonna be using high-speed sync as well. And here's the first basic rule. When in the sun, 1/1. So when thinking flash power, 1/1 is full power, okay? It's usually expressed in fractions. So 1/2 is 50% power, 1/4 is 25% power, and so forth, kind of down the list, right? When in the sun like this, you need a lot of flash power, especially when we start to do a little bit of diffusion, like with the mag sphere. So just start there. When in the sun, 1/1. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna go ahead and get my composition. That's perfect. Okay, so with that, here's the before and here's the after. That simple rule works very well when you're in the sun. Just start at full power, and then if you need to adjust it down, you can adjust from there. Now, another rule that I like to use when you're indoors, maybe working in an event or just in low light scenarios, is just to use the inverse of your ISO as your starting point for flash power. So for example, if you're working at, say, ISO 200, then start at 1/2 flash power. ISO 400, start at 1/4 flash power. ISO 1600, start at 1/16 flash power. And again, just adjust from there up and down as you need. But this way, when doing manual flash, you're getting great consistent results across the board. And it's also gonna help you to learn and internalize these power settings. So when you kind of pull up to a new scene, you dial in your camera settings, you already have a good idea of where you should start your flash power. Part 2, let's make the inverse square law something that doesn't require a math degree to understand. Let's make it simple. So look, we could spend an entire movie on this concept. We don't need to though. To understand the basics of this, it's actually pretty simple. This is my flash currently set up just right to the right of where Chrissy is standing, okay? I'm gonna be shooting it from back there. I'm gonna shoot a portrait so that way we have kind of distance to move the flash around. Now, the inverse square law just says this. The further the flash gets from your subject, well, the less light is gonna get to your subject. The only difference here is that it's not quite intuitive. And I'm gonna explain exactly what I mean. See, right now the flash is maybe 3 feet away from Chrissy, and you'll notice that it has no modifiers on it whatsoever. I'm gonna be firing this at full power, and we're gonna start from just 3 feet away. Let's go back to the camera over here, and I'm gonna continue explaining. See, intuitively, we would think that if I move the flash maybe twice as far away from my subject, I'm gonna get half the amount of light, right? The inverse square law basically just says that no, you're actually gonna lose a lot more light, and I'll explain exactly how much in just a second. So first, I'm shooting from this position again on my 7200. I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of compose the shot right here so we get the flash out of the shot. I'm gonna use a bit of foreground as well. I'm at 1/2000th, f4, and low ISO, and Chrissy's just gonna rock that kind of volleyball pose right there, just like that, for all of our shots, okay? So you'll notice that at full power, and even this distance, I'm really not getting a ton of light. It's enough, but it's not a ton, and it's only just on the face, right? That's because I'm basically trying to zoom and funnel all the light I can to the face. Now, let's say that I double the distance. So now I'm gonna go to 6 feet away from Chrissy. Intuitively, this is where we might think that, okay, well now half the amount of light is gonna reach Chrissy. But in reality, it's actually a quarter of the light. The inverse square law, all it's saying is that if you double the distance, put that number over 1. So 2, you're gonna put it over 1, 1/2, and then you double it, right? So 1/2 squared becomes 1/4. So every time you double the distance, you actually lose 75% of your light. Or in other words, we're only gonna get 25% of the light onto Chrissy from this exact same shot, exact same everything, okay? And that's exactly what you see. It's not half the light, it's 25% of the light. Inverse square law just means that as the flash gets further away, you're losing a lot more light than you think you are. And this is because the beam of light, how light travels, is in this wide beam. So when you have your subject standing twice as far from that light, they're getting dramatically less light because that light is lost everywhere. There are ways to compensate for this, of course, but it's as simple as that. Just understanding that as you double the distance, you get 1/4 the amount of light. So we found this bridge, and I absolutely love the look of this. It'll be a perfect spot to kind of demonstrate soft versus hard light. I've got Chrissy sitting right in the middle of this bridge, and I'm gonna go ahead and just light from about right here. We're gonna keep the same combo. So it's just a standard flash with the sphere placed on it, just for a little bit of diffusion, so we can kind of have our baseline example. I'm placing this, you'll notice that in each scene that I've placed it just a little bit above our subject, because I want the light to look like it's coming from a natural angle. And you'll also notice that I'm positioning this at the same angle as the sun, because I kind of want to just add to the light that the sun is putting on our face. Now remember, we're in the sun, so we're going to go ahead and just start at 1/1. We're going to start at full power. I'm shooting a little bit further back on my 7200, so I can get this entire kind of scene in here. And let's see what we get. I got a tiny bit of the stand in the shot, but that's okay, I'll nix that. Now we're gonna create a softer light. The way we're gonna do this is increase the size of the light source. So what I have here is the MagMod. This is the 24-inch octa, and I've placed it onto a ProPhoto B10. So again, any flash works, but here I'm gonna use something that's more powerful, because if I'm gonna open up the light source and I'm gonna make it more soft and larger, I need a more powerful light. Putting a softbox on a flash this size when working in like midday sun like this, you're just not gonna get enough light output. A good general rule when you wanna keep your light soft is to look at the size of that softbox or the size of your modifier and keep it around 1 to 2 times distance from your subject. So in this case, this is a 2-foot modifier. So I kind of want it between this 2 and 4 foot distance to keep it in this ideal range. Now just remember here, that this is size in relation to your subject. So if I take a large softbox, it doesn't matter how big it is. If I move it 20, 30 feet away, it's gonna still be a hard light source. This is why the sun is, well, the hardest light source, right? It's absolutely massive in terms of size, but in terms of relative size to us, it's a little pinprick in the sky. So when you want a soft light, it needs to be large in relation to your subject. And let's take the shot. Now again, when in the sun, 1/1 or full power, right? Even though this is a much more powerful light, this is 2 to 3 times more powerful than my small flash here, I'm diffusing it. And because I'm diffusing it, I need more light output. So I'm just starting at full power again. And at full power, it actually looks pretty perfect. I love that. Now putting these images side by side, you can now see the difference in light quality. So the harder light, that smaller light source, it has a much sharper shadow to highlight transition on the face. Whereas the softer light source, it has a much softer or more gradual transition from highlight to shadow. Again, my preference here is to match the light source to the type of story or image I'm trying to tell. There's no such thing as a right or wrong type of light, but I do believe that maybe there is a right or wrong type of light depending on the story you're trying to tell with your imagery. Let's go to the next one. Well, hello. So nice of you to join us. Okay, part 4. What if you were to add gels to the mix? Now I'm gonna use a blue gel here, and we actually have an entire video on this subject by itself. But let me just give you a quick idea of how gels can really add a lot of pizzazz to your photos, can really change up the color. So first, we're gonna do a baseline image. I'm gonna take a shot right here, and I've got the 24-inch mag box right there placed onto the light source. So we're using the B10. Now I'm using an ND filter for this shot, and we probably need to do a separate video on why, and also why I'm doing it the lazy way of holding it over the camera. But what this essentially allows me to do is keep the sync speed slow enough where I don't need to go into high-speed sync. I can still shoot with a wide aperture. And I'm gonna keep my camera's Kelvin at 6,000 Kelvin. And this is what you're gonna see. You'll notice that I'm actually gonna be framing Chrissy right against the kind of highlight of the sky. Perfect. Now I want you to see the color shift, because what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna take the exact same shot, but this time I'm gonna throw a blue gel onto the flash. I want you guys to go check out that other video it's kind of an intuitive guide to understand how gels change light color. But essentially for this scene, if I'm making my light source blue, then what I need to be doing for my subject is I need to warm her up, right? In doing that, it's gonna make my whole scene shift orange. So what I'm gonna do now is go back to the camera, and I'm gonna bring my Kelvin. I'm just gonna set it manually to as high as it goes. We're gonna go to 10,000 Kelvin. And by the way, that was the full blue. So let's see, we're gonna go 10,000 Kelvin. I'm gonna grab my ND filter, and we're gonna do the exact same shot. Now in looking at that shot, you'll notice something. Number one, we actually lost quite a bit of light. So anytime you're gelling, you are gonna lose light, okay? So you need to be using more power and whatnot. In this scene though, you'll also notice that my shot in camera is still kind of blue. That means that in post, I still need to warm it up a bit more. So this is the final before and after with that color shift. You'll see how big of a dramatic change it is. So gels are a fantastic tool in just wowing your client straight out of camera because of what you can do in terms of shifting color from how we naturally see it. So play around with it. Let's go on to number 5. I'm gonna make this one quick. When it's a good time for you, consider investing in another off-camera flash, because I'm gonna show you, well, we can do a lot with just one light, but oftentimes a second light in your scene is gonna add that much more dimension to your shots. I'm gonna demonstrate that right now. So for right now, I have the MagMod, the 24-inch Octa on the B10. It's placed just directly to the left of my subject. In fact, what I'm gonna do is take a first just shot right here so you can see, because I already have the sun as my primary kind of backlight, right? And what I'm doing as well is I'm framing her just right against this kind of hill, because you'll see if I get a little bit low and frame her against the sky, we kind of lose this entire hair light, right? So what I wanna do is stand up a little bit higher, frame her against that hill, and then we get this beautiful backlight and glow across everything. Now from here, I'm gonna go ahead and add this flash. We're gonna do a little test shot, and we're gonna have this pretty close to full power, if not full power. All I'm gonna do is just boom this up a little bit, and maybe just bring it a little bit more out of frame, right about there. And that's fantastic. So I'm gonna go to like 1/1600, right there. I'm loving that. Now on the far side of the body here, the shadow is fine, and this is a look in and of itself, right? But I can add a lot of shape and dimension to it by just putting a kicker on that side. It's gonna edge out my subject. So here I have just a regular flash. This is just an A1, and on top of it, I've placed the CTO gel. I'm gonna place this basically kind of right at this cross direction. So it's almost aiming right at that main light. And I'm gonna leave it at full power for now. So we're gonna take another shot with everything exactly the same. And I already love what it's doing. You can actually see what it's doing in the hair, but I do want it to be just a little bit more powerful. It's at full power right now. Because I'm at high speed sync, I am losing a bit of power. So I'm gonna bring this just a bit closer. I do like to keep my rim lights kind of more on the subtle side. Like if I'm edging someone out, I like to keep it a little more subtle. I'm just gonna have it edge part of the face, like the back side of the face, almost like the sun's kind of coming in from the back angle. Right there. Oh, I love that. That is gorgeous. Now look at those two shots side by side. just adding that kicker to edge out your subject adds so much extra dimension. But hopefully you enjoyed. I want to see you all in the comments. If you guys have questions, thoughts, let me know. I do my best to, I read all of the comments. I do my best to reply to all of them as well. And let us know what you want to see in future MagMod videos. We'll also link up everything we use, all the gear in the description of the video. And we'll also link up Chrissy again so you guys can give her a follow. That's it for me. See you guys next time. Peace.